we want to kind of get into um, what are some of the types of trauma that you might experience. And then we'll get into, some of the symptoms. How do you know you're in trauma, experiencing trauma? What are some of the physical or emotional responses that you might have to it? So, so the three types, that I kind of identify, through doing the research is there's acute trauma, then there's chronic trauma, and then there's complex trauma, which um, could lead to the PTSD diagnosis, where it's like, okay, this is persistent, this isn't going away. So let's talk about acute trauma. So acute could be like a response to a singular event, like maybe, yes, we had a hurricane, and it was just a one-time event. And so I'm traumatized from this one thing, and it may just be short term and may go away, once the sun comes out again. Uh,
Yeah, and I'm
or
past it. Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right. Um, and then the chronic could be this compounded thing, like, every day I'm growing up in a house where I'm getting yelled at, screamed at, threatened with violence, beat, things like that. That's chronic over and over
yeah.
and over.
Ongoing. Yeah,
Yeah, ongoing. Or, like you said, just back to back things might have occurred.
yeah,
And then you have the complex trauma, which is typically like when it's lasting longer than a month, right? It's not getting any better. You're not seeing any reduction in symptoms. You're just as, afraid as you were the first day that it happened, and maybe even more so. Now you're getting into more of a complex trauma. And so how you might treat those things could look differently. But um,
yeah.
at first, we want to be able to acknowledge the differences and kind of what it looks like to experience trauma from different perspectives. To that point, I think I don't want to be um, insensitive, but I think sometimes we label things traumatic, or it's big. It's a buzzword. Trauma is really getting
Yeah, for some people.
utilized a lot now.
Yeah,
And it's one of those things that I think we need to be careful in labeling things as trauma that may not be, but we also don't want to discount or not acknowledge things that very much so are. So when we can kind of hone in on, well, is this traumatic or is it something else, and not give this huge looming large power to something that may not be. Um,
yeah,
Not to say that one thing isn't traumatic for a person that that for one person that wouldn't be traumatic for another, but I don't want to blanket everything as trauma either, because that can
yeah. And I think to your point, some things might be acute, right? But some people have try to label as complex, right? So not everything gives us PTSD, right?
right.
So I think that there is a sort of spectrum of trauma, and there are certain traumas that we just happen because we are alive. Like it's traumatic being a human being. Coming at the mom's
Living on earth.
correct. Yeah, I mean, childbirth is so this trauma has started when you are born, right? So I think there's a spectrum of trauma, but I think some people uh can label everything as complex, right? That and not everything is complex. Some things really do need, like some intervention to sort of help this person to be able to function because it's affecting your functioning, right? There's
Yeah,
symptoms
so
and
that's
it
the
affects
part.
your
Yeah,
functioning.
that's
Yeah.
that's a good point. That's a good distinguishment. It may be trauma, but it may not be that type of trauma. And so everybody doesn't have PTSD. Okay. And I think that may be the word that may get overutilized. I think some to some extent is like, I got PTSD from this and that or whatever, and it's like, well, do you? And so um let's not self-diagnose. And maybe it isn't impacting your functioning really. You may just not like it. It may be make you uncomfortable, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have PTSD.